Hey everyone, welcome to the Mount Valor podcast. This is Garrett Netherland, your host. We are at episode 6, and we just want to say hello. Thanks for listening again. Today, I have a good friend, Mike Barnes, on. He goes to my church, and he's a really good dude who's doing good things in his life. And I thought it'd be fun to have him on the podcast. Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey everybody! Again, just thanks for having me on the podcast. Again, it's Mike Barnes. So a little bit about me. I am originally from Juneau, Alaska, and grew up there. And then, as a lot of people on here, I am a pastor's kid as well. So I kind of did grow up in the church, but it wasn't always that way. My parents were actually like hardcore partiers when I was a young kid, and then the Holy Spirit just kind of got their hearts and transformed them. And so from about age 7 or so, I grew up in the church. Um, and my dad became a pastor when I think I was in high school.
Mm.
So it was kind of a different lifestyle for me. We were pretty poor. We lived in a trailer park. My dad worked 2 jobs actually. He was a night school janitor, and then he was the maintenance guy in the trailer park we lived in.
Wow.
It was an interesting childhood, like just not seeing my dad that much. Um,
And
but
that's all the way up to high school?
yeah, and then he retired, and then he went back to college actually at a uh, older age, and then got his degree in ministry, and then as soon as he could, he started preaching and got involved in the church, and then as soon as I graduated, he went and moved to New Mexico first, and then Nebraska, and then Idaho. And each place he was a pastor in all those places.
Did
And
you
then with
follow it? Did you have to follow him when he moved to all those places?
no, because I went to college, and then I joined the military right after college. So being a pastor's kid for me was more of like when I was in like college. So it
Mm,
was a different kind of world for me. Like it was more of like when I was in college, living the college life, like
yeah,
partying, doing all that stuff. And
yeah.
I honestly stepped away from the church when I was probably about 15. We were part of a Church of Christ, and what happened was the church split. There was conservative side and liberal side, and in my young Christian walk, I took a lot of um, I thought the church was like the foundation. I
Hmm.
misunderstood what foundation in Christ was.
Mm,
I really rooted in like the church and not Jesus Christ.
right. Like you were
So,
rooted in the building, not your heart.
correct. Yeah. So when the church split, um, I was like, dude, this is dumb. Like religion's dumb. Like you can't. And I just kind of walked away from that point. Like I still go to church, but I pretty much walked away. And
Yeah.
so I'm going one way, and my dad is going the opposite direction.
Mm,
Uh, he's just like diving into the word, diving into being a pastor, and I'm like just partying up in college and just being dumb.
yeah.
Um,
A lot of us did that though. You weren't the only one.
no, I was not the only one, but it was just a different, because my parents were always, talk to me about like the church and push me to go to church and like,
Was
but I
that
never
was
really,
that during when they talked to you about going to church? Was that like during your upbringing, or was that after your dad became a pastor?
no, it was definitely in the upbringing, but I felt like there was no, and this is no fault to my parents. My dad did sit down with me and he did walk me to the point of getting baptized when I was like 13 or 14.
Mm,
But I felt like the Church of Christ was very legalistic.
hmm.
So there was very little like um, allowing the Holy Spirit to like come and move.
Sure.
And um, I had some people in life that definitely like spoke truth into my heart. Whether I listened or not is a different story, but just felt like there was very little like transparency and authentic
Yeah.
uh well in my church. It wasn't until later in my life where I realized what it meant to be transparent. One,
Yeah.
uh, because you got to be the good little Christian on Saturday or Sunday, but like
Right.
Saturday night, man, I'm out just raging.
Yeah. So going back before the church split, what was your like walk like before the split, and how long were you going to that church, and how long was that?
So I started going to that church. My parents finally came to Christ when I was like 7 years old. And
Mm-hmm.
you gotta think like that was a huge shift for me as well, because my parents were like hardcore partiers, like drug users. Um, and it was almost like night and day. Like one day they were partying, next day um we were in the church. So it was around seven, I think, 6 or 7 years old.
Did you
And
know
then
your parents did drugs? Like, were you aware of that?
I was to some degree, but it didn't like click until I got older. And
Mm,
so then I like I knew what marijuana smelled like, and then I like knew like what intoxication actually looked like.
right.
Then I thought back and I was like, oh yeah, they were actually like partying a lot.
Wow. How far back does that memory go? As far as like, you didn't know what the smells were then, but then once you figured it out, or you didn't know what it looked like then, but then when you figured it out, how far back did that travel when you started to remember?
Uh, I would say probably like 4 years old.
Dang. Yeah.
I Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably my youngest memories too when I was 4, is just having those flashbacks of certain things. But yeah, that's crazy that you can correlate that from, 15 or 7 or 8 or whenever you smelt it, and then it jumps all the way back to 4 years old.
yeah, yeah. That's so going back to like that church. It was a good foundation, and my parents did a really good job as far as like getting me a good foundation. I think they did a great job as parents. Like, they were loving, they were always there for me.
Mm,
They really rooted a really deep, good foundation for me. But again, just back to the like being transparent and authentic, I just didn't have that around me. And so before the church split, like I hung out with my youth group. I was really close to my youth group in my church.
that's
We
cool.
hung out outside of church, like we were all best buddies. But then we all started to walk away at the same time. Like I
Was it because
smoked.
of the split?
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, as soon as that split happened, we all started like, you know, partying way more.
Mm,
Um, I just think it was because we all saw um, that the foundation just was crippled,
right.
and then nobody like wanted to. And it was so crazy because when the church split, people couldn't even be friends, And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, you guys can not believe the same thing, but like, really, you're gonna not be friends with this person? I was like, dude, this is dumb.
Do you know, well, like what part of theology they got hung up on?
Yeah, so it was instruments in church.
Oh, like on the stage, like instruments?
Yeah, so it was a completely acapellic church, all like old school hymnals, and like
Mm-hmm.
no page like stuff. And they wanted to like, actually, it was my mom was one of the first ones like started raising her hands, just feeling the Holy Spirit move her, and like they were like, nope, don't raise your hands. Um,
Wow.
and then it's kind of got into like, well, would you guys ever think about having like a piano? Oh no. And then it just kind of like started to dive down into this like really dark place of like, women don't have a role, like you shouldn't even be like be seen in the church. And then it's all these things started coming up from, I guess it was like old, I don't know, like old doctrine that I didn't even know about. And people, I don't think a lot of people even understood until people started asking the questions.
Mm,
And it just kind of blew up. And the whole church was like, nope. Um, and then we started going to another church that was much more liberal.
mm-hmm.
And I just felt like it's really like, um, I don't know, like almost angry with God, and angry,
Mm-hmm.
like this isn't real. Like
Do you
if
feel like it
this
was
is
just
what,
kind of all of a lie? Like you were just hanging on this thing that's just not
yeah,
there anymore?
exactly. That's exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
And so I turned away from God pretty hard all
And
through
what
college.
what age was this? Like, what would you say, like the ages where you're just like, no more God?
I would say probably 17, right
Yeah.
before I graduated high school. And then something else, I was really good at football. I was really good. And my senior year, I broke my neck. My senior year of football.
Mm.
So on top of all of that, I was just super angry with God. I was like, because I wanted to go play football in college,
Yeah.
and I was like, dude, I'm done. Like, what have you actually done for me? You've shown me that you're frail. You show me that you're not really there for me. Like, this is what I wanted. I wanted to go play football, and now I can't. And
Yeah.
so I just was like, I'm done.
Well,
Um,
I think men specifically, and I don't know if it hits at different points in people's lives, but I mean, for me, I got into a sport later in life, and like all I wanted to do was to go play professional beach
yeah,
volleyball.
yeah,
And you just kind of like I what do you call it? Like idolize that, right? And you're just like you have this overall goal. It's almost your whole life. It consumes you. It's a part of you, and you think because you want it that it's a good thing, and then it doesn't come to fruition, and all you want to do is kind of raise the finger at God and just be like, why? Like this was my plan. Where were you? Not why aren't you supporting my plan?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think I think a
that,
lot of guys struggle with that and how to like overcome that, but also like come to like come to terms with that might not be God's plan. And ultimately our father has a better plan than we had a plan.
yeah,
But in the midst of it, like all the pain, all the sorrow, all the maybe depression, depending how hard you fall, it's hard to like see any of that.
yeah. It really is. And you hit it on the head, like God's plan. I've just now, uh, later in my life, I've just now started to see like God's plan,
Mm,
and I'm like, dude, I'm like, I wish I could have been more in tune with Him. I mean, I think I'm in the right place. I mean, He's done so much in our lives.
yeah,
You can get to that about like adoption and fostering later, but
yeah.
I mean, it's just he's done so much in my life through my rebellious
Mm,
uh, like life, and he's
yeah.
shown just like, dude, your plan might be your plan, but mine will always be better. And whatever you do, I guarantee I will make it. I will make it holy, and I will make it mine. And he's done that, and it's been amazing to see.
And you end up liking that plan better, right? You're like, gosh, thank you. You end up saying thank you at the end of it. It's not clear in the beginning. You're just a lot of boo-hoos and a lot of words that we can't say on the show, but it's just a lot of that. And then as the pain wears off, and then you start going down the route that he actually wants you to go on, and then you get to a certain place, you're just like, man, I could not imagine my life any other way.
Yeah, yeah. That's honestly kind of what happened was when I was living my own plan, my own life. I joined the military out when I was kind of done with college. I did college for 3 years, and I wanted to go be a police officer. That was like my thing. Uh,
Mm. What college did you go to? Where?
Southern Oregon University.
Oh, dang. How'd you find that from Alaska?
Honestly, it was they came to our. It was actually a school that I was looking at to go play football at,
Mm.
and they were small, like Division 3 school. Like not they weren't anything big, but it was something that I thought maybe I could go like walk on the football league, football team. Um, and so I kind of found them through that way. And then actually, one of my best friends in high school was going to that same college, so we actually went
Oh,
to college
nice.
together. Yeah,
And was your neck cleared like after because your neck broke? Like
yeah.
what
So I
what was that look like? Did you get depression? Did you get sad? Did you get I mean, obviously you said you got mad, but what does that look like and what did the healing time look like?
so yeah, it was like 4 months of like being in a neck brace, and then I mean that's a miracle in itself, honestly.
Hmm.
That I just didn't realize at the moment. So I broke the bone. It's actually the bone that your head swivels on. I actually
Oh, geez.
I crushed it head on head open field tackle, and and I was wearing the neck brace, and then I went back in 4 months later for like a follow up MRI,
Yeah.
and the doctor called my parents and were like, "We don't understand this, but like his bone just healed," and they were
Wow.
like, and then I was like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Yeah, your bone just healed itself," and I'm like, "This is insane." And then my follow-up question was, can I go play football? And they're like, no. And I was like, but then but so that healing process was definitely kind of a strange one, as far as like I was stuck in a neck brace, but then just it was a miracle. God just healed me. Didn't heal my heart for sure,
Mm.
and my soul. And it took a pretty dark place in me, as far as like I was in a serious relationship with a girl, and all my buddies thought we were going to get married. And then I went to college, and I was like, no, nah, I'm not ready for this. Like, I don't want
Oh,
this.
did you break it off?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I did. And I
was she
just wanted to
crushed?
live life. Yeah, I was just in this rebellious phase of
Yeah.
like, God, you've done nothing for me. And what's crazy, man, is that girl that I actually brought her to Christ.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then
Like later, like after you broke your neck and
no,
all
no, no,
that,
why
or
we
before?
were dating. And then I went to college, and like I went off a deep end, and uh just broke it off. It's kind of a weird story.
It's
Uh
Mike's way or the highway right now.
yeah, it really was. It really was. And then I got into judo pretty hardcore, and then that was kind of my outlet.
Mm.
Uh Started competing in judo, and um yeah, and then from there, like I said, kind of did my own thing. And then when I was told that I couldn't go into the federal law enforcement, that I needed military experience, I was like, well, okay, I guess I'm gonna go do military for a while.
Oh, you couldn't go in the federal, but
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what I did is I did 2 years. I got my associates in law enforcement, and then a second associates in juvenile delinquency.
oh wow.
And then I did a 1 year internship with the while I was going to school with the Eugene Police Department in Eugene, Oregon.
Okay.
And I just realized very quickly, I was like, this is not for me. Like, I don't like this.
Was
And
it
so
because like it was just like not much action, or like what was the
yeah,
reason?
it was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to this domestic violence case again. And I'm like, oh, this is boring. Like, I want like the high speed, low drag
Where's the
stuff.
freeway chases?
Yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted like that's really what I wanted, was all that
Right.
stuff. And so so I was
And
like, I'm gonna go.
at this point, are you still away from God? You're just kind of doing your
Oh yeah,
own thing.
oh, yeah, big time. Yeah, I was doing my 100% my own thing. Then I started dating this girl, and her dad was actually in the military,
Mm.
in the Coast Guard, and so he kind of like talked me into it, and told me about this thing called being a rescue swimmer. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. And then looked into it more, and I was like, that looks legit.
Yeah.
And I want that. That's like jumping out of helicopters, saving lives. I was like, that's cool. And so that's why I joined. I was like, I want to go do that. And
There you go.
and then again, God just hitting you with the right hook in my mind. Uh, I get accepted for aviation. I passed the flight physical. I passed the swim test. I get the airman program, and I'm about to go uh, graduate to go to the advanced swimmer school, and I destroy my shoulder, and
How?
I'm like done. We were doing underwaters, and so it's pretty much you underwater, you swim for 25 meters, and you pop up and do a bunch of pull-ups, and you
Uh-huh.
the water underwater for 25 meters, and jump up and do push-ups, and just like they just do this till you like can't
Die.
leave arms. And I didn't want to give up, and I jumped out of the water and jumped on the pull-up bar, and I pulled as hard as I could, and my shoulder just like pop. And
How many pull-ups did you think you did? And even just for our listeners, like you got to think too, swimming, you're just totally using your shoulders over and over again. And then you're going on the pull-up bar and using your shoulders and lats over and over again. So you're just beating the tar out of your body.
yeah,
How many pull-ups do you think you had at this point?
oh, I don't know, probably close to 70, probably. Yeah.
I think the average male can probably do like 10 in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's
was doing a lot
a
of
lot.
kipping. I mean, let's not think that I'm some like crazy, but but still, like
You
I
were
was
ripped,
getting
bro. Just say it. You were ripped and you were super strong.
at the time, yes, and I'm getting back to it. But yeah, at the time, I was in pretty good shape.
So what
Uh,
happens? You feel your shoulder go, and then what?
and then I go to the doctor, and um, they tell me like you can't go swimmer. Like there's no way. Like um, they're like you could, but you need to go back to the boat because I did a little over a year on a buoy tender,
Yeah.
and it was absolutely horrible. I
Yeah,
like
no one likes being on a boat.
yeah, and I was like I'm not going back to the boat. So they were like, but there's this job called avionics electrical technician.
Mm,
It's critical, and you could go do that instead of going back to the boat. And I was like, I have no idea what that is, but it sounds better than the boat.
yeah.
So that's what I did. And it was like so far, like I just found I just made chief, so I've made it a great career. Um, but at the time, I was still pretty angry with God. And then um, I go to school in North Carolina. I graduate pretty high in my class, but there's a bunch of drama that happened, and I get orders to Mobile, Alabama, and I'm like, what in God's name
There's
am I
no
gonna?
ocean out there. There's no coast out there.
No, it was. I was so angry. Um, and then I was in another relationship that just kind of it was a very bad relationship. A lot of lies and deceit in that
Mm,
relationship,
mm,
um, and it brought me to a very dark place. Um, and that's when I really started like abusing alcohol, uh,
mm-hmm.
just because I just felt lost. I literally felt lost. I was like,
Mm,
I don't, I joined the military. I'm stuck in this military. I'm not
yeah.
doing what I want to do. I've had like two pretty serious relationships like fail,
Mm-hmm.
one of my own doing, and maybe even the other one too. I mean, I don't know, but I think I definitely played a part in that one. Um,
And how old were you when you started like to drink heavily?
like 26, 27.
When what was your relationship with like your family like? Was everything still cool or like was everything, you know, not well?
I mean, with my parents, it was kind of like somewhat superficial, like I
Mm,
would, tell them like things are good. I mean, in reality, they weren't. And then actually, they could just tell that I was not in a good place. I mean,
yeah.
they just tell. Um, but it was at that time in my life where um, that's when I refound Jesus Christ and
Mm.
really dove back into him.
What
I,
does that look like? Because I think that's a so every man I've talked to so far, including my own story, there's always a pivotal moment where you hit, quote unquote rock bottom. And I will say there can be other like low points in life, but this is the pivotal moment where you're like, I will never go back to what I was doing, right? Like I know for sure God is for me whatever is out there, drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, whatever you can name that's going to try to fill a void, it just can't do it. And I've tried it all, right? Every
yep,
man on my podcast has tried some version of filling that void. And so now you're here at this point with this rock bottom situation, you're drowning yourself in alcohol. And then so what does the point look like where you're like, you got Jim Bean in one hand, and then when do you actually step foot or have an epiphany of like, I need Jesus and then go back to church? Like, take me through that whole process.
okay. So basically, it was actually one night, honestly. I had been drinking almost every night, and I stopped going to the gym. I was gaining weight. I wasn't me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to a party pretty far from my house, and I got lit. I
And
was
you're still in Mobile, Alabama.
yeah, I'm still in Mobile,
Okay.
and um, I'm to the point where I can't even walk straight drunk. And
Mm.
I get in my car, and I was in my truck at the time, and I start driving home, and I think I'm doing great. Uh, and
You
then
legitimately think you're doing great. Like, you're like, yep, I'm going to get
I
home.
remember like, in my brain, like I had the window rolled down, I'm listening to music, and I'm like, I'm doing all right. Like, I can't believe I'm driving this good. And then I literally take a turn, And they have like these service road things. If you guys know what service roads are, they're like roads next to like the freeway. And I
Uh-huh.
lived off of a service road, and um, I thought I was doing good, and I literally realized when the cop pulled me over that I was driving on the wrong side of the service road. Uh, but I made it almost home. Just so you know, I did make it almost home. And the cop walked up to me, and he was like, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I'm like, "Nope." And he's like, then he told me, get out of your truck. And I was like, all right. Got out, and he's like, look at where you're at. And I was like, oh crap. And then I was like, my career's over, my life's over.
Wait, where were you at? Were you just on the wrong side of the service road?
I was on the wrong side of the service road, but I like literally my house was like probably a block away,
Oh,
like
dang.
my apartment. And he grabs my ID, and then he sees my military ID, and he's like, dude, where do you live? And I was like, I literally live right there. He grabs my ID, he grabs my military ID, he gets back in his car, he turns on his lights, and he's like, I'm following you home. And he's like, I have your address, I have your name, I have everything about you. If I ever hear your name on the scanner, I will personally come and find you. And he drove me to my house, and then he walked me to my gate, and he said, don't forget this, man. Jesus loves you. And I was like,
Wow.
what? And I'm like completely intoxicated, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, dude, this dude just like saved my career, possibly saved my life, didn't take me to jail, and just said, remember, Jesus loves you. That's all he said to me. And I was like, holy smokes, dude. And I was
Yep.
like, if this is a wake up call, then I'm an idiot.
My
And
skin's tingling over here.
yeah. And so the next day, I was at, I don't know if it was the next day, but it was a couple days later. I was at work, and I met this dude. I won't say his last name, but John, uh, awesome Christian dude, and it was like, "Hey man, I don't know why, but God has been telling me that I need to invite you to my church." And I'm like, "Dude, what is going on right now?" I'm
And
like,
this
"I had
all happens within the same couple days.
3 days. I think it was like 3 days. Like
Yeah.
cop like saved my life pretty much. This dude that I knew from I used to go skateboarding with him from work. I didn't even know he was a Christian. Like, and then he just told me this. He was like, I just think God told me to invite you to church. And I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And so I went to his church, and it was the most powerful message I ever heard. And it was just,
Mm,
and it was actually, he was speaking on the Beatitudes.
mm,
And I remember like thinking, dude, I just need just to fall on my knees and just repent. And so right there in church, I've only been there. I think it was the second Sunday I went there in front of like all these people that I barely knew. I just dropped my knees, and I just started bawling, crying,
wow.
and said, God, like I'm a wreck. Um, I know you, but I've forgotten you, and
Mm,
I want to remember who you are. And so I really kind of dove into to Christ again.
mm-hmm.
And ever since then, it's been a rocky road, but I've never gone back to where I was. Now, definitely, I've still struggled with substance abuse from time to time, depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, the devil's always knocking, right? I mean, he's
Sure.
always, but I've never got to that point of where like I just didn't care. I've always cared to know God. Like that stage in my life, I didn't even care to know God.
Right.
I
Yep.
didn't
Same.
want to know God. And now, like I said, with all the struggles I've had, I've always still had a desire to know Christ.
Yep. Well, I feel like too, that's an amazing story. And I feel like too, like after you hit that rock bottom, you know, just deep sorrow, pain, like what was amazing about that story first was love conquers all sin. And sometimes I really struggle with that because there's sometimes when my friends are just being dumb and I just want to pop them in the face. And I guess a lot of it is because like I'm just angry that like I can't fix them. or I can't like say the right thing. But it's so encouraging to hear that police officer, basically say, go and sin no more.
Mhm.
And it's just sometimes it's just the simple things that get people. It's the simple things matched with the depth of what that other person did and how maybe guilty, shameful, whatever they feel. And then when those two things meet, something amazing happens to the person that feels all that shame and guilt. It just kind of like it's just gone.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden you're just like, wow, God, you love me that much. I've spit in your face for what? That by now it's 10 years that you're
Yeah.
just like, yeah, God, screw you, doing my own thing. Like your church is nothing to me. It was just a building. And I can't believe you do me like this. You told me twice from two doctors that I'd never do the things that I wanted to do. I can't believe you. And then you go down this whole right, you have all this pride, you have all this just all these different emotions that are just all from the world, and all that equals is sin of drinking, of bad relationships and all these different things. And then you drive home one day knowing like you think you're good, and then you get pulled over and you realize like your life is over, and then boom, God's like, I still have you.
Yeah. Yeah. What a like a reality check.
Oh man, that is really good. And then so now you're here, you met John, you're going to church, you confessed all your sin, you've been forgiven. What does let's just call it the newfound relationship with God, what does that look like now?
Now it
Now,
looks
not like now, not like not today now, just
right, right,
at
right.
27. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, I just felt on fire for God. Man, I
Mm,
was actually, um, I started leading a small group, um, um, and it grew really big, and with a bunch of singles and young married people, and I got into a ministry of going and witnessing to homeless in Mobile, and so I was taking food to the homeless, just going and sitting down with them, and just talking to them, and just telling them that how much Jesus loves them, and if I could
wow.
just pray. And this was like on my off time weekend, so like I was no partying anymore really, and I was just
Hmm.
dove into this ministry. Um, and then so much so that like John and I, we actually coordinated a Thanksgiving, and we chartered like two massive buses, and we
Wow.
went around town, Mobile, and we loaded up two full buses with homeless people. Uh, we took them to the church and we just fed them all, and we did a huge like Thanksgiving for all these homeless people.
That's epic.
Yeah, it was super cool. And so I was just really on fire for God, and I just saw like how He was changing my heart. Like He was showing me that there's a community of people
Mm,
around the whole. I know this is like juvenile, and I didn't quite understand it until then. But you are really who you surround yourself with.
mm,
Like you're around a bunch of people that just don't want to know Jesus, you're gonna fall right into it.
mhm,
I
mhm, mm.
realized quickly, and so I just changed my surroundings. I dropped friends, got new ones, and I just I just kept saying yes. Like, because I remember when my buddy John was like, "Hey, do you want to go witness to some homeless dudes?" I'm like, "No," and he's like, "No, dude, I know it's gonna be kind of crazy, but we should just let's do it. My heart's in it." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." And we did it, and it was like it was pretty epic. I mean, there was some scary moments. Some of those guys, unfortunately, just don't have the mental state. But then you get in these crazy conversations that just kind of lead down some really cool places. Um, but I just think the fact that I just kept saying yes to God,
Right.
I kept saying yes, God, whatever you need, like whatever you want from me, I'm yours. And I just was obedient, and I was transparent, and I just let Him lead me, and it was awesome to see.
That's amazing. And, I've heard so many different of your stories just since I've known you, and they're always like I don't want to say they're all really radical, but they're all just like very bold and outgoing. And I just love the authenticity you bring to your faith because it's rejuvenating for me to hear, and I think it's good for our listeners to hear just, what happens when you just make yourself available, right? Like I think part of saying yes is just making yourself available
Mhm.
to his work. And when I say work, it's not like you have to go every Sunday, although you should go most Sundays to church, but just showing up and being available for every day, not just Sunday, every day. Like when you're going to the grocery store, when you're going to the gym, whatever your little neck of the woods is, you should be like, God, how can I be used today? Because you just don't know what's going on in people's lives ever. You just
Mhm.
don't know. You can preconceive and you can think all these different things, but you really don't know. Someone who can look so happy could kill themselves at night. You just
Right.
don't know. And I
Yeah,
just I love the authenticity you bring to our church, to our friendship, to our men's group. And it's just really nice.
I appreciate that. That means a lot.
You're welcome. So, uh, with the remaining time, I kind of want to jump into just like what your life looks like now and kind of tell people, you know, just a little bit about your kids, a little bit about your wife, and like what you're doing in the Coast Guard now, like what your rank is in the Coast Guard, and just kind of like how God has like blessed you in the last, so many years since you were 27.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make it. So I went to Alaska after Mobile, single there, and then um, kind of got to do some really cool stuff in my career there, as far as like career wise. Got to do a lot of search and rescue, and that was like epic, and that's a whole nother story. But then I got stationed in Clearwater, Florida, and that's where I met my wife.
Nice.
Started dating, um, and
Can you
then
go over? I like to ask everyone, how'd you meet your wife?
online.
Online. There you go.
Yeah, yeah, met her online, and
What was the first date like? Like, did you guys just meet at a coffee shop? Did you
yeah,
guys?
we met at a restaurant, and I was living in South St. Pete. If anybody's familiar with the Florida area, I was living in South St. Pete. She was living in Sarasota, so like over the bridge, like a 40-minute drive.
Okay.
First date. By the way, my wife is from Poland, so like I always like had a huge thing for European girls. Um, Met her, and I was like, literally within 5 minutes, I was like, this girl, I'm gonna marry this girl.
Wow.
She put me in the friend zone in like 5 minutes because I just came from Alaska, so I'm dressed like a bum, and like she's just like, this dude is like, he's friend zone for sure. But I just did not let up. I was like, nope. And she's like, no, go date other people. You just got from Alaska. And I'm like, no, like you're it. Like you're the one. And so I was
Wow.
very persistent, and I won her heart. And
How,
I think
how many months? How many months from friend zone to winning her heart?
uh let's see. First date was like in August 6th, I think. And then I was going on deployment in December. I was leaving on the 23rd of December. And I remember she wrote me a letter right before I was going on deployment. She was like, I want to be with you. Like, I want to be like yours. And I was like, boom, got it.
Oh, got
Yeah.
it. Amazing.
Yeah. So
Nice.
it took some time, but I worked it over.
You know what I love though, and I ask these questions to a lot of the guys on the podcast, is just you just didn't give up.
No.
And I'm not talking about like, stalkering and like all that kind of stuff, but I'm just like, just so many millennials and below maybe just give up too easily in a lot of different things. But I really commend you for being able to just, friend zone, cool. I'm not going to accept that. And then I'm going to see if I can really, you won her over, right?
Yeah.
Like you saw her as this amazing woman. This is the queen you want for your kingdom, and you end up just trying to court her the best you can, and she finally comes around and sees how amazing of a man you are, and it's really worked out in the end. And I just love the fact that you just didn't give up, you pursued, and you just didn't take no for an answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, that kind of followed into like our whole relationship as well. Like, we got married, and um, we've struggled with infertility on both sides, and that's another conversation I would love to have with any man that's in struggle with that. That's a
Mm-hmm.
tough to be as a man, to find out that um, you have a very low sperm count, and like
Mm-hmm.
you are probably the reason why you guys can't have kids. That's a very
Mm.
tough place to be, dark place.
Yeah.
Um, and then this is another time where I had to really dive into to God, because we actually were able to adopt an embryo over in Czech Republic.
Mm.
We had it adopted. We were going to go over, get it in vitroed into Anya, and um, that was our plan for having kids. Then COVID hit, and that whole plan just went down.
Wow. So that was back in 2020 or
Yeah,
2020. Yeah, 2020.
yeah, and so we just felt like God had called us to foster. We had some really close friends, still close friends to this day, um, fostering, and they went through just a really tough battle. They actually lost their foster baby to a murder. Unfortunately, it was a crazy
Wow.
story, but it really just opened up our minds and our hearts to see like the brokenness of the foster system,
Mm.
how much need there was.
Mm-hmm.
So Anya and I just kind of dove into like, okay, God, if we cannot be parents to our biological children, then we will be parents to foster kids.
Mm.
So we just dove into that. Um, and then we got our hearts broken, from time to time with
Sure.
almost adopted a little one, but that fell through. And then um, we started to uh, we did some short term fostering for our daughter Sarah, and then we learned about her brother. Um, and then they went back to their foster families, and the foster mother of Sarah came over to our house, and this is no joke. She said, "I can't explain this, but Jesus tells me that you need to adopt these kids." And we're just like, "What?" And we're just like, "Dude, God, what are you doing here? Like, we wanted to adopt one kid, and you want us to adopt two?" Like, and so, but we dove into God, and like back to the whole thing of just being available
Yeah.
and just saying yes. And
Mm.
so we just like prayed about it, and we just said, "Okay, let's do it." And
That's amazing.
yeah, and I was actually deployed in Puerto Rico when I found out that the adoption went through. Could not.
Tough deployment, bro. Puerto Rico. Tough deployment.
It was during a hurricane. Like, all right, cut me a break.
Uh, that's
Yeah,
amazing though. And you know what's important that you kind of hit on is, it's good to be available. It's good to say yes, but it's a lot of wisdom in praying, right? Because you don't want to just say yes to everything. You don't want to be available just to everything, because there's a part of you where it's like you can only do so much. You only have so much battery power before you give out, and you need to take some rest. And even Jesus took some rest. So it's good to have that prayer and do that prayer, especially with your wife, and gain that wisdom and gain that insight to where you actually know what God's doing in your life and what you guys agree on and come to. And when two people pray together and you come to the same conclusion, you know it's from God. And I just love that story of you and Anya coming together and praying and figuring it out between God and you guys, and ending up in adopting these kids.
yeah, yeah. We just kind of well, to backtrack a little bit. So the foster family of Casey and Sarah, they were praying, heavily praying for like a family to come into their lives. If it wasn't going to be them, they wanted a family to come into their lives
Mm,
to be able to step in to take Casey and Sarah. And so like they were praying, and then we were praying for like some type of a direction, with what do you want from us as far as parents, keep fostering or what? And we were just because we had just lost a foster baby, that we didn't get to adopt, and so we were just deep into prayer as far as direction.
mm,
So by those foster parents of Casey and Sarah previous, of their just being obedient to Christ and praying, and then our praying, we just came together. And um, I think that's the big testimony here. I think is just the power of prayer and being
hmm
obedient. Um, and so I think that's why, and that's how we became parents. It's just being obedient to Christ.
It's amazing. In the last 10 minutes, let's kind of talk about, what does your life look like now, right? Like you're still in the military, you've been married for a while, you have some kids. What does your spiritual life look like right now?
Um, I think mine is is much stronger than it's been in a very long time, but I still struggle with some things for sure. I I'm just found out, I'm making chief, or I made chief, pin on actually in a couple weeks.
Which is a
Um,
huge accomplishment.
yeah. Well, thank you. I'm finishing up my degree. And so I feel like I'm burning the candles at both ends. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of time I don't make the time for my spiritual walk. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's been something that I've been struggling with.
Mm,
Um, but as just like a week ago, I started a journal, and that has been
nice.
kind of a game changer. Like just writing things down, like what do I need to do? What do I want? What am I grateful for? Like
Mm-hmm.
reflecting on just like the things in my life instead of looking at the negativity of like what I'm not doing. What am I struggling with? Like what do I have?
Mm-hmm.
And then that just makes me grateful. And then giving myself just 10 minutes in the morning, open the book, open the word, and then start my day with prayer, start my day with the word. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that has been really helpful. And then just kind of diving into this jiu-jitsu with you guys. That's been huge because when we start, we say Psalms 23.
23, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just it's gotten me to like I want to memorize it. Like I got
Mm,
it almost memorized, get like the last little part. But it's just kind of a reminder of like I need to be in the word constantly. And so I've been really pushing myself to be in the word as much as I can. So like when I go to the bathroom, I don't look at like Facebook or Instagram or look at
that's a good idea. Every man has time to look at the
yeah,
word when they're on the toilet.
and so that's what I've been doing. I've been looking at the word and it's like
That's awesome.
and it's been really good. And um just trying to be uh really I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Um just trying to be a better husband in everything I do,
Mm,
being a better dad. Um because you're tired. I've been working a lot. I've been doing school.
mm-hmm.
Uh, just been a lot of stress, and it's so easy to just kind of unleash on your wife and your kids.
For sure.
Um,
They love you the most.
yeah, and so I've been really trying to be cognitive of like how I'm expressing my feelings towards my wife and my kids,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that takes prayer and that takes time with God, and so that's been pretty cool. Um, and just the growth that I've seen in myself as
Mm-hmm.
far as a husband and a father in the last 6 months, it's been pretty amazing to see. And having my wife just tell me like I've seen the change in you. I've
Wow.
seen you're not so um edgy, you don't like lose your temper as quick.
Mm-hmm.
That's so awesome to hear that. I'm not perfect.
Any encouragement from the wife is awesome to hear.
Yeah, I know. And I still struggle, but just to hear that, it helps me kind of motivate me. I'm like, okay, God, I'm trying. And um I don't know, I've just really try to dive into him as far as like everything that I do, as far as at work, my language, the way I present myself, what I do at home, how I conduct myself in front of my kids, um, how I conduct myself in front of my wife, like all those things. Like I try to think everything that I'm doing to glorify God.
Mm.
Um, and so that's been cool to see that he has really been there to like fill in the gaps and like really hold me up. And I've committed to him, and he is always committed to me. And so he's giving me the strength that I need.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love that. It's encouraging. It's always encouraging to hear what other guys are doing, and I know our listeners get a lot just out of that. And I think you hit it right on the money too. Is it's not necessarily the amount that you put in every day to get closer to God, right? Because there's going to be seasons where you can spend an hour with him, and then there will be seasons where you only can spend 10 minutes with him. But the fact that you're spending time with the Father and the fact that you're spending genuine time with God, because God could even know, even if you spend an hour, what if all that isn't, your full heart? What if it's only half your heart? Like, God wants to be with you and wants to be intimate with you. And I think just it's beautiful that, you can acknowledge where you are and what's going on in your life. And, you can still find the time to make room for him. And even those 10 intentional minutes, it really echoes a lot throughout your day. And just getting that, first off, and having grace on yourself too, of just like, it's not all about performance in the Christian world. It's just actually about getting depth and doing that over time, right? Just that 1% over time that's going to accumulate to a lot rather than just doing an hour here or an hour there or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah,
But in the last couple minutes, what would you say to our listeners? Just like if you had one word of advice just to grow in your spiritual walk as a man, what's your couple sentences of how you would do that?
I would say number one is just be obedient.
Mm,
Um, and that is one, you got to know the word. Um, Knowing what it means to love your wife. I mean, love your wife as Christ loved the church. I mean,
mm-hmm,
um, knowing what that actually means, and then trying to do it, I mean, every day. And
mm-hmm.
you're gonna falter. I mean, I'm a prime example
Many
of that.
times, many times.
But just trying to be obedient and then walk with grace.
Mm,
Um, like don't think you're better than anybody else in the room, because you're not. Um, and try to be as humble as possible, but also lead with strength if you can. 'Cause
mm-hmm,
I'm learning that. I used to be somewhat of a yes man, and I'm slowly learning. For those who don't know, my wife had a cancerous tumor that got removed, and it was a very difficult time for me,
mm-hmm,
and for her, of course. But I had to learn how to be very strong with my words, with other with work and my commitments, because
mm-hmm.
she came first. Um, and so that took me her that whole situation with her taught me strength,
Wow.
taught me how to really step into my family and into God and be like, you know what? This is what's important, and
Mm-hmm,
not my image at work. And so, but also doing that with humility and with
mm-hmm.
grace. Um, so that's what I would just tell people: be obedient, lead with grace and humility.
Love that. Love that, man. I loved having you on the show. This was a really good chat. I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you. This was so awesome, dude.
Well, hey guys, this is the Mount Valor podcast. Appreciate you guys listening. If you guys could do me a favor and subscribe, like this video and this chat that you guys heard, that'd be huge for us. This is the Mount Valor podcast coming from La Jolla Christian Fellowship. Appreciate you guys listening. Peace.